Hey, it's Jared with Gear and Light. Today the gear we're talking about is the Cosmo C1 from Hollyland. This is a wireless transmitter setup that allows you to wirelessly transmit video signal from a camera to another device, such as a monitor. So we're going to talk a little bit about how I utilize this system, and I'll talk about my experiences, because I feel like there's a lot of wireless transmitter systems out there, some of them very cheap, some of them very expensive. And for people who are like me who want this technology but don't have tens of thousands of dollars to spend on high-end equipment, where does that leave us and how good is the functionality that we're going to get? That's what I wanted to talk about in this video, and of course focus that around the Cosmo C1 platform. So this Cosmo setup is pretty compact for what it achieves as far as distance and latency and overall performance. And I have it attached to my A7 IV rig right here. So you can see the Cosmo is attached to the front of the handle that I have. And so the reason that I did that is so that I have it all compact on this handheld setup. This camera in particular, I am usually shooting handheld at an event, or I'm filming something and I'm handheld. Sometimes it does end up on a tripod, but not very often. So I wanted it to be attached to the camera out of the way so that I can easily access it and that it doesn't get in the way of me controlling the rest of the camera. Because usually with this camera setup, I am moving around quite a bit. I might be filming a music video, or I might be filming a live performance, and so I'm moving around with this camera, and I don't want things hanging off the camera that are going to get caught. I don't want big antennas or just any appendages on the camera that are going to cause me problems. And the Cosmo C1 definitely is accomplishing that, connected to the rest of this build. Now, if you're interested in the build itself with the A7 IV and the rest of this setup, I've got another video on that topic, so make sure to check that video out after you get done watching this one. So let me talk about why I use this setup and how I'm using it. So I've got two things on the table here. I've got my camera with the setup and the transmitter, the C1 transmitter. I also have a monitor that is battery powered with the receiver, the C1 on the receiver. And so the Cosmo here, both transmitting and receiving, and I have everything powered up. So this monitor is on and it is actively transmitting. So when I am filming for a client, usually I need them to preview what I'm seeing somehow. And I don't like cables, and I don't like them being too close to me because I like my space. And so this setup allows me to give them something to hold on to. They can hold on to this monitor and watch everything that I'm doing. And so as long as I'm communicating well, they know what I'm actually shooting and what's going on and what shot I'm attempting to get. And so this setup here allows them to be a good distance away from me without having much latency at all, and they're able to see everything that I'm filming. Now, when I'm filming live performances or something that's even being live streamed, I use this setup and plug the Cosmo receiver into whatever switching board is being used. Off camera here, I have an ADA Mini Extreme that I utilize for most of the live streaming events that I shoot. And rather than running cables, whether it's a handheld setup like this, or it's even a camera that's just on the other side of an auditorium, running this setup wirelessly, the latency is so low that everything switches and is just really nice. When I'm switching from one view to another, there is no delay or anything that you would expect in running things wirelessly. I've been in auditoriums of elementary school performances where there's a room full of well over 100 parents, all of which having cell phones on them. Most of those cell phones are out as they're taking pictures, and so none of them are in airplane mode or anything like that. Meanwhile, the Hollyland Cosmo C1 is transmitting across all of those cell phones to the back of the room where my switching board is and the receiver is, and I have no issues with with connectivity or delay or dropped frames or anything. This setup locks on and is absolutely fantastic. So what are some of the features of this unit itself? As you can see it right down in here, it has an HDMI input, and then it also has SDI as well. And so depending on how I wanted to connect based on the camera, it has that capability. Of course, coming out of something like the A7 IV, it's HDMI only, so I don't have SDI to deal with here. You can see I have power running out of it, and the power is running down to the back where there is a V-mount battery. This is an Indy Pro 98 watt-hour battery, and it's powering not only the Cosmo, but it's powering the camera, and it's powering the Atomos Ninja that is on top of this setup. So this one battery is powering everything, and I can usually run this setup non-stop for a few hours easily and not have any issues with the battery going dead. This is also charging the camera. I mean, everything is running off of this battery, and it's absolutely fantastic. It powers everything. The Cosmo is relatively low energy consumption. Even when it is transmitting, I've got the Atomos recording and I've got the camera running. I'm able to run this all off of one single battery, which is great to be all self-contained like that. And then, of course, there is the option to mount a battery. It takes, like the Sony batteries, can mount to the back of the Cosmo. I also have a battery mounted on the back of this monitor. I could also get a V-mount setup and run everything off of a V-mount on this handheld unit as well. That's probably something that I will do in the near future. But there are multiple ways to power these Cosmo devices. You could power them from a battery that snaps onto the back, and then there's also the plug-in connection that can run to something like a D-tap into a V-mount battery, or of course you can plug this into, it comes with an AC adapter as well, and I could plug it into an AC adapter. When I am in a live streaming scenario and I have access to power, and the Cosmo receiver is connected to a switching board of some sort, I'm just running AC power right into it. That way I don't have to worry about batteries or anything like that. I'm just running straight power right into the receiver. So let's talk about, well, the distance is a thing. The performance over a distance is great. I've been in a lot of auditoriums, and especially with a school that I've been working with this last couple of years, they have a lot of their school performances in the gym, which is a big opened building with, of course, a lot of interference in that place because there's speakers and there's all sorts of other stuff in there. There's Wi-Fi, there's hundreds of parents with their cell phones, and I'll have a camera on one end and I'll have myself and the switching board all the way in the back, and I have no problems with connectivity, no dropped frames. The latency is as tight as it could possibly be, probably even tighter than if I had to run a cable that far, and so the performance is great. The latency is a huge thing to consider when it comes to going wireless because of the amount of time to encode, transmit, decode, display it on a monitor. It takes a lot of time to do all of those things, but the Hollyland Cosmo C1s do it so quickly. Like I said, if I had to run cables of any sort over 100 feet, this is going to be faster than the delay that I would get from having my data running, my video feed running over 100 feet of distance. So the latency is not an issue at all for me. And then, of course, if you have multiple cameras running on these systems, they have individual channels. The setup process is very simple, very easy here. If you can see, there's a little display on the unit right here, and I can go into the menu and I can actually, it's on auto right now, but I can hit scan and I can have it connect to that device, and then I can toggle through the menu. Only very few settings to pair this. You could change the language, we can factory reset it, and then return back to the beginning. The info tab will show me what version of firmware I am running, and then that is really it. It will display your frame rate and also your resolution. It'll display your battery life and the quality of the signal on the side of the device. There's a power switch right here and a USB connection right here that also you can power this device from. So you can power it over USB, and then you can power it also over a cable, which is how I'm doing it on the camera itself. I have a cable that comes out of the Cosmo C1 and then goes into this little breakout adapter on the back of the camera that accepts multiple DTAP and then one DTAP out to the battery. So essentially one DTAP out is producing power for the Atomos and the Cosmo, and then USB is charging the camera. So a nice setup, and wireless makes things so much better, especially now that the technology has come as far as it has. The Cosmo setup, probably one of the best things that are out there for the price, because anytime that I've seen latency performance and distance performance out of a wireless setup like this, it has been out of something that is at least $5,000 plus. And while there is a time and a place for that type of technology, especially in more of like a motion picture environment where you have a lot of other factors into play, a setup like this is very obtainable, very affordable for somebody like myself who is shooting projects for a good budget, but not a massive like motion picture type budget. My budgets on most of my projects are under $10,000, and because of that, I need to have equipment that makes the quality of work that I am producing look really good, but not break my bank. So just to kind of show you a little bit of that performance, obviously these devices are really close together and latency tends to increase over distance, but as I'm kind of moving my hand around here, you can see how little latency there is, and moving my hand in front of the camera and what we're getting on the display. So very low latency. Yes, these are really close together, but you know, the latency does not degrade much even at further distances. So this setup comes with different antennas. You can see I have the Omni antennas here, and I have more of the straight directional antennas on the receiver. Most of the time this is going to be pointing in the direction of wherever the camera is. On top of that, the Cosmo setup does come with a case, a storage case that you can put everything in, and that case contains a swivel arm that you can use, a Hollyland swivel arm. It comes with a USB-C to USB adapter that primarily would be just for probably firmware updates and stuff like that. I then have another set of these antennas. If I wanted to take the Omnis off and mount these antennas, I have a set of antennas as well. And then I have my AC adapter in there. And so this case is nice because it keeps everything safe, gives me a way to manage those when they're not in use on the camera and on the monitor themselves. So it's nice that it came with a nice protective case. But this setup, like I said, one of the best setups that you can get for the money as far as wireless transmission goes. Lastly is the fact that this wireless setup supports 60p. So 1080 at 60p is fantastic, especially if you need that for live streaming or whatever transmitting purposes. It's not necessary for like a system like this where I'm just displaying what the camera sees for somebody else to view. But in live streaming, if you're going 60p, it's a necessity. You're able to do this wirelessly, and there's a handful of other use cases that could support needing up to 60p as well. Also, just thinking future-proof as you know, we want to increase the performance of our feed. That is definitely an option. So check out the links in the description below. This Hollyland Cosmo C1 setup is probably just one of the best that's out there. I also have a lot of experience with the Mars series from Hollyland, which is what introduced me to Hollyland in the first place and got me on board with just the performance that you get for the price of these units. So I've got links to the Hollyland units down below in the description. Make sure to use those links. Help support the channel when you do. If you have any questions about use cases, I'm doing new things all the time, so I will develop new use cases for these as I continue to go through different projects for clients. So if you have questions, feel free to ask down in the comment section below. Otherwise, thanks for being here, and hope to see you back in another video soon. Take care.